last year, big tech firms stand accused of transgressions such as selling campaign ads to shadowy Russian groups and not doing enough to fight harassment and threats on their own platforms. Brianna Wu, who worked in the video game industry and is now running for Congress in Massachusetts' 8th District, is here to explain how she wants to make change in tech, and she knows from personal experience how vicious the trolls can be. Brianna, you played a critical role in my new book that is out this week, Brotopia, Breaking Up the Boys Club of Silicon Valley, and I'm so happy you're here because you're such an important part of this story and a whole chapter on online trolling.
I just want to thank you. You really have written one of the very best books on Silicon Valley that's ever been out there. And I picked it up and I finished it in one sitting. It was just amazing.
Thank you. Well, It means a lot to hear that, especially from you, knowing that you have lived through it all. You know, let's take us back to Gamergate because, you know, some people may not remember just how bad it was.
Right.
This, you know, was a few years ago, and, you know, suddenly you had what seemed to be the entire gaming industry attacking you.
It was really harsh. You know, the summer leading up to Gamergate, what happened is the forces that became the alt-right, they found a playbook to silence any woman in the game industry that they didn't like. They would go after her career, they would critique her, they would send her threats, they would, you know, basically try to get her fired from her job. And this was happening left and right to my friends. And then, you know, I realized that the men in our field were not going to speak out for the women that were being run out. I had many back-channel conversations asking them to do the right thing, and they wouldn't. So what I learned during Gamergate is I kind of had to do the right thing myself. It led to, you know, there's no good way to have a Law and Order episode made about you, but you know, that's what happened with all the threats I got.
You were getting threats on Twitter and Facebook. I mean,
in real life, absolutely.
Right. Physical threats.
Physical threats. I had people, you know, throw a brick through the window of my home. Just a few days ago, I had somebody outside my home, my new home, taking pictures and sending me.
So you're still getting harassed as a result of Gamergate breaking out 4 years ago?
Yes, absolutely. It's just, we had a thing with Nolan Bushnell losing an award this week for his sexist past. This is the man that founded Atari, and I had spoken out about that. And, you know, the death threats and rape threats are back again. It's exhausting to deal with.
I do know that Nolan Bushnell issued an apology.
He did?
You know, one of the things that I talk about in the book is, you know, what if women had been more involved in creating these products like Twitter and Facebook from the very beginning? And Ev Williams, the co-founder of Twitter, told me that he thinks online harassment and trolling might not be such a problem. In fact, wouldn't be such a problem today if there had been more women on the early team. He said, we just weren't thinking about it. You know, they were thinking about wonderful and amazing things that could be done with Twitter, not how easily it could be used to hurl death threats.
Absolutely.
Do you think that having more women in the design of, let's say, Twitter or Facebook or Reddit, that online harassment would not exist today?
I wouldn't say it wouldn't exist because it would exist in different forms. But, you know, if you don't have people at the table that have different problems, like putting their input into a product, it's going to be a worse product. Like the tech industry creates products that work for a very small segment of the population. And it doesn't work very well for me, and I would guess very well for you. So I think, you know, it's not just the harassment. There's a larger business case to be made here. You know, in my industry, video games, women make up more than half of the audience of gamers these days. We are a sliver of the people actually running game studios. And that is so much money that we're leaving on the table.
So what do you think of the changes that Twitter and Facebook have made more recently?
I would say for me personally, I think Twitter has done a lot of work that doesn't get credited. I personally, I see the filters they put in place to like stop me from seeing the death threats. So I do appreciate that. I think they've taken steps, but you know, there's still a long way to go.
So Twitter, Facebook, Google have recently been called before Congress, you know, and the issues are wide-ranging from fake news to Russian meddling in the election to disturbing content to online harassment and trolling. Do you think that these companies can self-regulate, or do lawmakers need to step in here?
Well, I think that's the worst case scenario if Congress has to step in. You know, I say that as someone who is running for Congress. You know, in my field, video games in the 90s, there's a really interesting historical example that violence in video games was completely unregulated. It was just the Wild West. So Congress came and held some hearings, and as a result of those hearings, the video game industry instituted the ESRB, which basically put ratings on games like in movies so consumers could see those ratings and make an informed decision if that was right for their child, or maybe they're an adult and they want to play what they want. That was a best case scenario, but that only happened because Congress got involved with that. So I do believe that Congress has a role in solving, like this issue of fake news, basically campaign interference, harassment. I do want to see us be more proactive there.
And I know that's part of your platform.
Absolutely.
Is helping to protect users. Are there laws currently that if you get attacked online, there's actual recourse? Like, is it illegal to do that?
So I've spoken with Danielle Citron. She's the world's most preeminent legal expert on this subject, and it is. But it's worth noting, the tools we have for this are laws that were written in the 90s. And the world has changed a lot since the 1990s. So we need a Congress that can come in and write those laws, and more importantly, fund divisions of the FBI that can actually go look at these crimes and prosecute them. Due to freedom of information requests, we had people that sent me the most explicit, horrific death threats you can imagine, confessed to the FBI, but they chose not to bring that to trial and prosecute those people. So we need to, I believe, fund a certain division of the FBI that's going to look into those kind of extreme cases online and, make them meet the justice system.
How different do you think the gaming industry would be if women had been more involved in creating the games from the start?
It would be, we'd have better games. We'd have much better games. Do you know how bored I am with first-person shooters where you go kill 1 million people and then get an ending screen? No, we would have much better games. We'd have better stories. We'd have better characters. We'd be making more money. The game industry is sick, and we are not in a really great place right now. So
how much progress has been made since Gamergate?
None. I really wish I could sit here and tell you we had. And when I stood up to Gamergate, I did it because I believed the men in our field would do the right thing and change. But we just haven't seen it. With the Me Too movement right now, the only consequences we've seen for that in my field is one editor-in-chief fired about it and one freelancer fired, and Nolan Bushnell not getting an award. That's not really groundbreaking progress.
So why should we vote for you?
I think that we need a generation of legislators that are informed on technology. This is not a bipartisan, this is a bipartisan issue. Cybersecurity is a huge threat to this country right now. Do you remember the Mirai botnet that took down most of the information infrastructure a couple of years ago? That was 2 teenagers essentially doing that. We've got to really double down and bet big on cybersecurity. So I think there's a litany of perspectives that are just not being heard by our current Congress, and we need new leaders.